Hey everybody, it's Dan Semitovich, one of the hosts of Deviant, and welcome to part 3 of our investigation of the Hart family murders. Andrew will be here in just a second to bring you that story, but first, just a reminder, a lot of what we're talking about, pictures, videos, text, you can see it for yourself by visiting our Patreon at deviantpodcast.com or checking us out on social at deviant.podcast, on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It's a great way to experience the story in more depth and really get a sense of what we're talking about. So let's get right to it. There are parts of this show that may be difficult for some listeners.
On March 20th, 2016, the presidential election is 8 months away, and a portion of the Democratic Party is fired up by Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. The Bernie movement is moving, and in Vancouver, Washington, Senator Sanders is speaking to a rowdy crowd of nearly 5,000 at Bay High School.
All I can say is, whoa, a lot of people.
When you see political events like this, you know there's always an emphasis on imagery. Campaigns obsess over the way things look for those of us watching on TV at home. The people behind the candidate, the ones visible on TV, are usually very carefully selected, pre-screened. At this rally, when the camera zooms out a bit, there's a group of 7 people standing right behind Senator Sanders over his left shoulder. There are 5 black children, and one of them a young girl with glasses, and to her left, a boy in a fedora. There are 2 women, both white, standing with them, and the entire group is wearing blue Bernie Sanders t-shirts, waving signs each time Senator Sanders whips the crowd into a frenzy. After that rally, one of those women speaks to local Portland station KATU outside the high school about her support for the Sanders presidential campaign.
He's planting the seeds of a revolution. It's not a fake thing. It's not just a young people thing. It's what everyone that I know, a lot of my friends and circle of friends and family, this is what we've been waiting for.
Her words about Bernie Sanders is familiar language. A lot of people who support him say the same thing. It's organic, it's genuine, but there's something curious about her use of the word fake. That woman is Jennifer Hart, saying that she can recognize when something isn't real at all. And in that interview, her wife, Sarah Hart, stands next to her while Marcus, Hannah, Abigail, Devante, Sierra, and Jeremiah horse around. Looking back, the Harts just have a knack for being in the right place when the cameras are rolling. If you Google this story, there's photos all over the internet of the children dancing, singing, having the time of their lives long before the crash. And this is like professional photographer type stuff. They're in one of the most visible spots at the Sanders rally, right behind the candidate. And now they're in front of the camera after the rally speaking to the local news. Maybe it's serendipity. Right place, right time. But the Harts are just out there, front and center, for everyone to see. We're all wired differently. Some of us are wired for good, some of us are wired for bad. But a select few step outside all of society's boundaries. From Cold Open Media, this is Deviant, the Hart Family Homicides, Part 3. Welcome back to Deviant, where we chase the truth into the dark corners of what people are capable of. I'm Andrew Iden, and this is Part 3 of our investigation into the Hart family murders. In our first 2 episodes, we took you to the scene of that crash on the Wan Creek turnout, and through the results of that coroner's inquest that ruled this case officially as a homicide. So if you haven't already, you'll want to go back and give that a listen. Over the course of reporting and researching the Hart family story, it becomes evident that there are corners of the public, regardless of the evidence, that won't believe what happened. They refuse. There's no way the women they know are capable of something so awful. Part of that is because we live in a world where some people pick and choose what is true and factual and what isn't. That isn't new. But it's also because what Jen and Sarah do is work very hard, selling a well-crafted brand of clear-eyed optimism, hope, and progressiveness. Here's Sheriff Tom Allman again. You've heard him in the last couple of episodes. He was the one leading the investigation into the Hart family crash.
They had many faces. They had the face of being very strong, white, lesbian moms who were raising these 6 Black children bravely in this new world.
Here's Brett Barnum again. You heard him in the last few episodes. He's the police officer in that Portland protest photo with Devante from 2014.
You know, you look at their social media when it was up, before they turned it off, it seemed like they had a very epic family life with lots of travel.
And that's certainly the appearance they wanted to give when their children were all wearing Bernie Sanders for president t-shirts, and they were just so proud of what they were doing to show this is who we are, this is how diverse we are, and this is what we stand for.
You have these parents who, for the better part, are trying to instill their values on these kids, which are values of, I think, respect. I think values of be bold and, be emboldened.
Of the two of them, Jennifer is, by all accounts from friends, the sort of alpha of the pair. She's always posting on social media videos of the kids dancing, exploring the woods, and describing talks with them about the world, about race, about politics. But the Jennifer Hart investigators are finding is different. Shannon Barney was one of the main investigators on this case. He's retired now, but at the time was a lieutenant with the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. You've heard him in the last few episodes. He worked closely with California Highway Patrol and Sheriff Tom Allman.
It became fairly obvious that Jennifer was a complete disciplinarian with the children. Almost like you have the social media side, which is we're the happiest family on earth. And then what you start to learn is in the home, maybe it's not anything close to that.
When you look at Jennifer Hart's Facebook page, it's pretty clear the image that's being portrayed. We all have friends like this on social media. They use words like gratitude and mindfulness. They just want to shut out the noise of the real world and make sure we're all taking the time to reflect on what it is we do have rather than what we don't. But they also want to make sure you're seeing what they're doing. And that's Jen Hart. You can hear it clearly in her social media posts.
October 30th, 2016. Sometimes we wake up lakeside in the heart of the Cascades and have chocolate pie for breakfast. Because life.
There's the photo she posts of 2 of the children reading a book on the banks of a pond with a majestic mountain range in the background.
September 2nd, 2014. First day of school. Hart style.
And it isn't uncommon for Jennifer to pack up their SUV with all 6 kids and head out on the road, leaving Sarah behind.
July 28, 2016. Living on the road for weeks at a time with 6 kids and no plans probably sounds like a nightmare for some people, but it absolutely nourishes my soul in every way.
On one of those trips, Jennifer and the kids stay with a family friend. We'll call her Diane. She knew Jen and the children and spent a lot of time around them. Following the crash, Diane's interview with investigators describes something jarring.
One of the friends told me that Jennifer and Sarah had come down to visit, and they brought all the kids, and the kids were very well behaved. But one of the things they noticed right away is if one child had to go to the bathroom, they all went. And they thought, that's very odd, because the bathroom's just down the hall, that these children couldn't go to the bathroom by themselves. And so later on that evening, they had ordered pizza for everybody's dinner. The children were allowed to have 1 piece of pizza each. And the host basically had ordered quite a bit of pizza, for that many kids and that many people. And so they put it away in the fridge or somewhere on the counter. I don't know which. Anyway, the next morning they woke up and he casually and very humorously mentioned that somebody during the night had some more pizza, at which time Jennifer seemed to become quite angry and started interrogating all of the children to find out who ate the pizza. And it was almost like you did something without permission. And apparently, according to this host, none of the kids would admit to having eaten pizza without Jennifer's knowledge during the night. So she physically took them into a room, made them lie flat on their backs on the floor for almost, I believe it was like 6 hours, not making a sound, not talking, not anything.
Diane also describes Devante as, quote, the favored child, while Mark is unfairly targeted by Jennifer, end quote. She also says that when Jen's not around, the kids eat freely, and as soon as Jennifer comes into the room, they stop. Over the course of their friendship, Diane sees plenty that raises eyebrows. She says the first time she meets Devante, he mentions he's starving. The kids are only allowed small portions of food. She also says that Jen speaks primarily to Devante, and the only time she speaks to the other kids is to discipline or reprimand them. And verbatim, from one of the reports from the Oregon Department of Human Services, quote, she noted, Jen Hart always makes extravagant stories to make herself appear a hero. She indicated Miss Jen Hart appeared delusional, but did not know of any mental health issues, end quote. Diane did speak to Jennifer about her parenting. She calls her out. And so Jen does what Jen always does.
A lot of the friends, if they mentioned anything about Jennifer's approach to parenting, they were immediately cut off. No more contact, and it's just like we're not friends anymore.
Diane is cut off too, for years.
When you look at the facts of learning that these were two moms that punished their children by withholding food, or punish their children by having them sleep on the floor without a mattress, or just out and out punish their children, that changes the dynamics. It certainly takes away the image of being two proud moms who want to show the diversity to the world. It showed me that there were two moms that were very manipulative, one a little bit more than the other.
In 2014, Irene Van Rickingham is at an interesting phase in life.
I was really frequenting music festivals. I had gotten kind of swept up in this idea, kind of like the 60s movement, like love and peace and all the things. Every music festival I was attending was like the visionary type, spiritual type, the idea of unity and consciousness, and was always embraced by these music festivals. The idea of being family friendly was always embraced.
So in 2014, she packs up and sets out for the Mystic Music Festival in Ashland, Oregon.
Someone told me, you have to come see these kids dancing, a friend of mine. And I was like, oh, what? That there's these adorable group of kids and they're dancing with everyone. The first person I saw was Devante Hart. And at the time, he was so small, I must have been like 4 years old. And he had his free hug shirt on. And I was just so curious. My curiosity was just through the roof about these kids. They were so adorable and so friendly, and they were giving hugs. And I was just like, what is this? This is so unusual and great at the same time. And then that's when I met Jennifer Hart. And I'm just saying that makes my stomach flip-flop.
December 18th, 2013. This morning was a beautiful and hilarious reminder of why we travel and expose the kids to these transformational festivals. The people they have met on their journeys have filled them with memories, laughter, knowledge, music, friendship, and love that they will always carry with them.
I just remember dancing with them and engaging with them, and it was very joyous. My heart was very touched by their presence and how cute they were. I gave Devante a hug. He gave me a hug. Usually if you give Devante a hug, it's more like you're receiving one. And I just remember how much it felt like I was receiving something unusual, hugging that little boy. I was just like, this is unique and different. And I try not to use the word special too much, but definitely felt that way. And then my friend who told me to come and see them had explained to me that they were adopted. I was inspired and in awe, thinking, if she can do this with 6 kids that aren't her own, how could I improve my mothering for my one child that is mine? Um, how can I expose my daughter to the same kinds of things that the Hart kids are being exposed to? And what kind of reality would it be where I would be the kind of person that could create as much inspiration that she has? And that kind of experience happened every time I crossed their path. I always was humbled around her. It's very strange to say that now. Initially, and saying this also makes my stomach flip-flop, seeing her with her kids, it was like, wow, there's this impression I got was, wow, there's this person who has this much heart, not to be punny at all, that would adopt these kids and give them a better life and give them a different kind of life where they're actually being exposed to joyous people and culture, and that this would make like maybe a new precedent even for what children could potentially come to expect in the world. And she was seen as a hero and as a heroine, and not only by me, but by so many, as like a bleeding heart who had gone out to do the most and the best, and that something about her was another level and only to be admired. That's how I first felt when I met her.
As she travels around the music festival circuit, she sees the Hart family more and more often. And in the community, the Harts become pretty well known.
Other kids at the festivals never got the kind of attention that the Hart kids got at these festivals. And it's because these festivals are more so geared towards the idea of, like I said, unity and whatnot. And because these kids, the Hart kids, were so groomed so well, they were able to put on this face of what unity ought to look like in maybe an idealistic sense. We would pass each other, at music festivals, and I would stop and I would talk to Jennifer, and the kids would just kind of stand there and smile at me and give me a hug. They didn't really say much. And so that was really how our friendships began.
Videos of these festivals and the children are all over Jennifer Hart's Facebook page. It's some form of the kids dancing, wearing sunglasses, sometimes costumes and face paint. Adults come into the frame, dance with them for a fleeting moment. Everybody's all smiles.
The kids, they were always groomed to look happy. You never saw them crying or upset or fighting amongst each other or with their moms. They were always with these big smiles and dancing. And at first glance, that's great, right? I thought I was looking at the happiest kids in the world that never seem to go through anything normal because they're that happy. Where now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, what a red flag that was. That's not how kids act. Kids go through things, the whole rigmarole of experience, right? Children are just raw and real with what they feel, and they don't know to have this pretense that we learn to adjust to adopting in order to live in the quote unquote real world as adults. And it seemed like the Hart kids had already attained it somehow, although at the time, that's not what I thought I was looking at.
When Irene is around the Hart family, dancing and smiling is sort of the thing. But looking back, there are a couple of instances when the smiles and the dancing are gone.
This was the first time I had ever seen the kids not in their groomed position. They seemed upset. They seemed like they were walking with their mom and almost like they were in trouble, and no one was speaking or smiling as usual. And I remember Devante looking at me and his eyes lit up like, good news, a friend, instead of, oh, we're in this trouble we're in. And, like, here's an opportunity for something else to happen maybe. And I got this really strong sense from Jen, do not bother us right now. Do not talk to us. She said like a brief like nod, hi, like, kind of waving me along. And then immediately Devontae's head dropped. Then I remember walking away from that situation and having a really uneasy feeling. A feeling like, what could it be?
August 27th, 2017. This life, almost half of it has been shared with her. If I really sit still and ponder the vastness of that fact, it actually is quite overwhelming. Y'all know that our 20th anniversary is going to be a grand wedding celebration filled with loved ones in a glorious nature setting, right?
The only time I ever met her wife, very briefly, and I saw the dynamic between the two of them, and it didn't seem loving and friendly and inviting. I mean, in hindsight, now that I know, I can see, clearly, it felt like they were hiding something. It felt like they were scared. It felt like they were nervous that someone would catch on to them. I had no idea what I was picking up on at the time. I felt like, maybe they're having problems in their relationship, or, maybe something hard happened in their life and they don't know how to deal with it. Something felt unstable and unnerving. There was an interaction that I had with Jen. There was a moment when I approached her and said, like, Jen, I just want to say, like, it's really amazing to me what you've done here. And if only everyone in the world could have such efforts and do as much as you have, what a great world we would live in. And she went from being like in this normal state that you would normally find her in, she like switched into this very cold, hard version very quickly and said, it's not as easy as it looks. And I was in no way asserting that what she was doing was easy. In fact, I was commending her, right? Because it's not easy to raise children, especially 6 of them, I'm sure. So the fact that she felt defensive and like, what is she defending? That doesn't make any sense. I didn't say anything because I wasn't trying to pick a fight with her. I just went, oh, well, no, I can imagine. It's not easy at all. And it was almost as if this part of her just was not able to say, like, don't give me any credit. Don't put me on any sort of pedestal. Don't look at me as someone who you should aspire to be. It wasn't something she could actually say, but it's like she was holding that in and she got really hard because you could tell that she wasn't able to receive a positive message about what she was doing.
Let's go to that March when you learned what had happened.
Yeah. I was driving my car. I was driving on the freeway and someone who knew me that knew that I knew them called me and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm driving on the freeway. She said, you need to pull over immediately and look at the news. And my stomach dropped. And she said, it has to do with the Hart kids. And all my alarm systems went off. Like the thought of anything happening to them, just unthinkable. And then I pulled into the parking lot and I just remember feeling like you just come apart as a person. And I hadn't ever felt anything like that before. And I was so upset and angry about how little the community that I was connected to had been really responding. It felt like they just wanted to give condolences, and I was just like in some sort of peril. I felt like, why am I the only one like so rocked by this? Where are all these people that we were dancing with? Like, I thought we all knew each other, cared about each other, and like this would matter to everyone. Why is everybody seemingly fine? And then I just got more and more and more frustrated as the story continued to develop and all of this evidence started to come out about Jennifer and her wife. And I also just had this feeling that it was kind of like all Jennifer's idea and that Sarah kind of went along with it. And Sarah was like, okay, this is what we're doing. But it was more so Jennifer that was spearheading the whole nightmare.
Did you think it was an accident at first?
I never would have crossed my mind on my own. And it, in fact, had to take me seeing evidence after evidence after evidence to begin to conceive of, oh my God, this was not an accident.
The music festival community that Irene has become such a part of, and she is now no longer involved in, is having their own difficulty reconciling what happened to Jen, Sarah, and the kids. Over the course of researching this story, I've actually had conversations with people in that community who knew the family, and all of them, except Irene, are reluctant to speak on the record and share their feelings. Because in the aftermath of that crash, the online and real-life chatter about it is intense, and it's polarizing, because there is a very clear divide between people who believe Jen and Sarah are murderers and those who cannot, will not, entertain that idea at all. It's devolved into this weird, out-of-touch dialogue that kind of exists in a bizarre, blurry place that's between denial and delusion.
The community then started to, no matter what evidence was produced, deny that it could be possible that this was a murderous act and continue to stand up for Jennifer no matter what evidence was shown, which again speaks to their level of checked out, can't deal with the pain. It's too painful to conceive of the fact that I was friends with a murderer who murdered my 6 friends that were kids. I'm just going to say that this is all a setup. Like, the level of delusion is what's also very terrifying. So they tried to tell me like, oh no, they're making it all up. Jennifer's innocent. And I'm like, it could have just very well been an accident. If it was an accident, why would they make it up that she murdered her kids? And they're like, oh, because they want to make everything more sensationalized. And I'm like, good Lord, how much grandiosity can a person have around their own belief that the world is just out to get them and that they're incapable of processing pain? And I understand it's a very difficult scenario to accept. I was in therapy for a long time over just trying to accept the fact that I was friends with a murderer. The experience of hearing of their death and then coming to the realization that it was not an accident was a good 6 months where my life didn't quite function the same. For the first 3 months, I was really just like inoperative to life.
What do you think Jen was doing here with, like, what was the psychology behind, and I know you're not a therapist, you're not a psychologist, but just from your perspective, like, this entire story and this entire narrative, what was her goal? What was the intention?
I've sat with that question in my own version of it for an endless amount of hours. And while I can't say that I could ever come to an actual conclusion, because at the end of the day, it's hearsay, whatever I think. That being said, what I feel and assume is that Jennifer clearly was very mentally ill. Nobody who's mentally sound would even come up with an idea like this, let alone see it through. And not to excuse her and say, oh, it's okay that she killed kids because she was crazy. That's not at all what I'm saying at all. I think she was in some sort of tremendous pain and was incapable of looking at it. And her way of managing that pain without looking at it was to create this entire false world where everybody lifted her up to be this queen, so that it could somehow make her feel better about herself.
I remember you said to me once, if Jen and Sarah were sort of like looking for a place to hide with their life and the abuse that they were doing, I remember you telling me that they actually picked the perfect place because everybody was too distracted with their own whatever.
Fun, essentially. They're just like, oh yeah, we get to have fun. We get to just kind of escape and check out. And we need to have fun in life. There's nothing wrong with fun. We just need to be well-rounded about it. If I think of it in the terms that I put it the last time we spoke, I don't know how Jennifer and Sarah would have been able to get away with what they did for as long as they did if these music festivals didn't exist. that it was their outlet for the saviorism that they sought, where they got to be seen as, these heroes, heroines, while never being questioned. And in the real world, people aren't in a position to be looking at another person's life in a general sense. We go to the grocery store, we're focused on what we need to get, and we go home, right? But to have it in a social setting where people are interacting, and you were to do that in a place where people are inherently trying to avoid their pain, I don't see any other setting that could have been a better breeding ground.
This much is clear. The festival community does seem to be a perfect match for the Hart family narrative. It is the perfect place where furrowed brows or second looks are harder to come by. In the middle of all the freedom, music, and we're all here to just be together and be ourselves kind of mentality. Next time on Deviant. When the Hart family arrives at the Wan Creek turnout, the neglect and the abuse isn't some behind closed doors secret. It's actually on the record. People know about it.
Each of the system had their hand in what happened to those children.
The state of Washington knows.
No one batted an eye. And they left those children in danger.
The state of Oregon knows.
It wasn't fair to those children. It just wasn't fair.
And the state of Minnesota knows.
Their acts were becoming known to everyone, and there were fewer places for them to run and hide.
Until next time, thanks for listening. Deviant is executive produced by Clark Goldband, Dan Semitovich, and me, Andrew Iden. Clark is our story editor and booker. The show is written and produced by me and Dan, with original scoring by Shuvo Sur. Voice acting by Jessica Wilbanks. Sales, marketing, and distribution support comes from our partners at Gemini 13. Deviant is a production of Cold Open Media.